Long before iron axes bit into its trees, long before rifles cracked its silence, the forest was alive with voices older than any tribe. The whisper of pine needles in the wind, the sharp call of a raven at dusk, the quiet growl of a hunting wolf. To the people, these were not just sounds. They were warnings, promises, spirits wrapped in fur and feather. But what happens when those spirits turn against you? Imagine a night when the fire in the village burns bright, yet every eye is restless. Imagine the drum beats echoing, yet no song feels safe, because outside the circle of light, the animals are waiting, watching, no longer friends, no longer guides. The story I will tell you is remembered in pieces. Some say it was a punishment from the Great Spirit. Others whisper it was caused by pride when the people forgot the old ways. Still others believe it was only hunger when wolves, bears, and even deer turned desperate in the heart of winter. Whatever the truth, the elders called it the night the forest animals turned against the tribe, and it begins with a single, chilling sign tracks in the snow that led not away from the village, but toward it. The people woke to find their food stores clawed open, their hides shredded, not by thieves of their own kind, but by animals that should have been fearful of man. Wolves pacing the edge of the firelight, an eagle screaming above the village, even in the dead of night. The kind of signs no hunter would ignore. Was it anger? Was it a curse? Or was it survival, twisted into something darker? You must listen carefully, because in this story, the line between man and beast begins to blur, and the first warning came not with a roar, but with silence. Before the night of terror, the people lived in balance with the land. Their village rested in a wide clearing surrounded by towering pines and silent birch trees. The river curved like a silver snake, feeding them fish, quenching their thirst, and guiding them when they traveled. To outsiders, it may have looked fragile, a circle of tipis, a few drying racks, smoke curling upward. But to those who lived there, it was a fortress of tradition, memory, and spirit. Every morning began the same way. The women stoked the embers of the fire, coaxing them back into flames. The hunters stepped out into the frost, bows across their shoulders, eyes sharp as hawks. Children chased each other between the tipis, their laughter breaking the stillness of dawn. Elders sat in a circle, telling stories that carried more weight than weapons. These were not just tales to pass the time. They were instructions. How to hunt deer without angering its spirit. How to cut birch bark so the tree might heal. How to honor the bear, whose strength must be respected even in death. The people believed the animals were not lesser creatures. They were brothers, older and wiser, walking different paths under the same sky. To hunt was not conquest, it was a prayer. Each kill was honored with tobacco, songs, and thanks. But slowly, something began to shift. That winter was colder than any the elders could remember. Snow piled higher than a man's chest. The river froze, trapping the fish beneath thick ice. The winds howled day and night, rattling the hides of the tipis until children cried out in fear. Even the fire seemed weaker, its warmth barely reaching their bones. Food grew scarce. Hunters returned empty-handed more often than not, and when they did bring back game, the meat was lean, almost starved. The bones cracked too easily, the marrow too thin. It was as if the animals themselves were withering under the burden of winter. Yet the people still gave thanks. They still sang. They still offered prayers. But a whisper grew among them. What if the spirits are angry? One evening, an elder rose by the fire and spoke. His voice was heavy, his breath steaming in the air. The animals are restless, he said. Their eyes shine with hunger. Their tracks circle closer each night. We must not forget, if we break the bond, if we fail the old ways, the forest will turn against us. Most listened in silence. Some nodded. Others dismissed it as fear. But that very night, when the drums faded and sleep fell over the village, The first shadow moved at the edge of the firelight, a wolf, watching, waiting. The people knew hunger. They had faced it before, in lean years when the deer fled farther south, or when storms shattered their fishing grounds. But this winter was different. This winter pressed down like a living thing, tightening its grip day by day. The river, once a steady friend, was locked in ice thicker than any memory. Hunters hacked holes with stone axes, lowering lines baited with scraps. Sometimes, hours passed without a single bite. The fish below seemed too weak to move, or too wise to rise. The forests offered no mercy. Deer vanished into the deeper woods. Rabbits, once plentiful, left only faint tracks that disappeared into the endless snow. Even birds seemed to have gone silent, their nests empty, their wings carried elsewhere. Inside the village, families rationed what little remained. Dried berries, smoked venison, marrow cracked from old bones. Mothers pressed food into their children's hands and pretended not to be hungry themselves. Elders sat quieter each day, their voices fading with their strength. Yet survival was not only about food, it was about fire. The cold clawed at them constantly, a spirit that never tired. What had to be gathered daily, carried on backs already thin with hunger. If the fire died, so would the people, and so, every breath became a battle. Every sunrise a small victory. But the animals, they too were starving. Hunters began to notice strange signs in the snow. Wolf tracks, circling wider than before, no longer following deer but leading closer to the village. A bear's heavy stride, though bears should have been deep in sleep beneath the earth. Crows gathering in unusual numbers, staring down from the branches as if waiting. One night, a hunter returned with nothing but a story that chilled the camp. He had found a deer dead, but not from an arrow. Its body was torn open, devoured, not by wolves alone, but by smaller creatures too. Squirrels, rabbits, even birds had joined in the frenzy. That is not the way of the forest, an elder whispered. The order is breaking. Still, the people pushed on. They sang to the fire, prayed to the Great Spirit, and shared what little they had. Survival was more than flesh. It was will, it was spirit. But then, one morning, the hunters discovered something that silenced even the bravest among them. Their food stores, the carefully hung strips of dried meat, had been shredded in the night. Claw marks tore through the leather bindings. Prints in the snow led not away from the forest, but deeper into the heart of the village itself. The animals had come too. Them, and they were no longer afraid, before fear took root. The people lived by rhythm, seasons, stories, ceremonies. Even in the heart of winter, life carried meaning each dawn. Smoke lifted from the tipis in thin threads, curling like prayers toward the sky. Children's laughter echoed as they tumbled in the snow, their cheeks red, their voices sharp against the stillness. The women stitched clothing from deer hide, their fingers quick, their songs soft as falling snow. Hunters repaired bows and arrows, sharpening stone points, always ready for the chance to bring food home. But it was around the great fire that their true heartbeat lived. Stories carried through generations, woven into every crackle of flame. The old ones told of how the world began, when animals and humans spoke the same language. They told how the bear taught the people courage, how the wolf showed them loyalty, how the eagle carried their prayers to the Creator, and the people listened, wide-eyed. Because these were not just legends, they were instructions for survival. To hunt without respect was to invite disaster. To waste food was to shame the spirits. To forget gratitude was to tear the bond between man and beast. Even love and family were guided by these truths. When two young people wished to marry, the families asked, do they honor the hunt? Do they keep the fire strong? Will their union protect the people, not just themselves? The bond with nature was more than survival, it was identity. Without it, the people were nothing. That was why the first signs of change cut so deeply. A hunter spoke of wolves circling too close. A woman whispered that crows screamed at night, as though warning the village. Children cried that rabbits stared from the snow, unmoving, unblinking, too close to the fiver HT. At first, these things were dismissed. Perhaps it was hunger. Perhaps the mind played tricks in the cold. But slowly, unease spread. During one night's storytelling, an elder stopped mid-sentence. His eyes grew dark. He listened to something no one else could hear: the silence outside. "The forest has gone quiet," he said. Too quiet. The drums stilled. The laughter faded. Mothers pulled children closer to their sides. Could the animals truly be turning against them? Could the sacred balance be broken? The people clung to their ways: ceremony, fire, song. But questions whispered like wind through the trees and deep within the forest. Unseen eyes watched, waiting for the moment when silence would become strike. It began with small signs. The crows were first. Their black wings carved the sky above the village, circling not once or twice, but for hours. They cawed and screamed in a way no one could mistake. Crows were messengers. The people knew that. Their cries were never empty noise. They carried warnings, sometimes from the spirits, sometimes from death itself. Then came the deer. A young boy, no more than 8 winters old, ran back to camp one morning, his eyes wide with terror. He had seen a doe standing in the snow, watching him. At first, it seemed ordinary, but the longer he stared, the more wrong it became. Its ribs showed through its hide. Its eyes were hollow, too wide, too human, and instead of fleeing, the animal stepped closer, unafraid. That same night, the elders gathered. Smoke rose heavy from the fire as they prayed, their chants weaving into the still air. One of them sprinkled tobacco onto the flames, asking the Great Spirit for guidance. When the smoke curled upward, it twisted in strange ways, bending back toward the ground, as if even the sky did not want to accept the offering. "The animals are speaking," said the eldest woman, her voice low and rough, but not with kindness. Soon after, wolves appeared. At first, only their howls pierced the night, long and mournful. The sound sent chills through even the bravest hunters. But one evening, the pack came closer, their glowing eyes visible beyond the firelight. They did not attack, not yet. They circled. They tested. They waited. And then, a bare dot in the dead of winter. When all bears should be deep in sleep, a massive shadow lumbered into view near the edge of the trees. Its breath steamed in the frozen air, each puff like a spirit rising. It stood on its hind legs, towering above the snow, and bellowed. The sound shook the village to its core. This was no chance encounter. This was a declaration, the elders argued. Some said the tribe must give greater offerings: meat, tobacco, even clothing, to restore balance. Others warned that giving too much would only invite more boldness. A younger hunter spat into the fire and said, "Animals are just animals. If they threaten us, we fight." But deep down, many knew the truth. The forest was no longer silent because of absence. It was silent because it was watching. Every feather, every paw, every eye seemed to carry a message. You are no longer welcome here. And on the next full moon, that message would arrive in blood. The night of the full moon arrived, sharp and white against the black sky. The snow glittered like a sea of frozen stars, beautiful and cruel. The people gathered near the fire, huddling closer than usual. The drums were silent. Even the storytellers had no words. They all felt it, the weight in the air, the waiting. Then came the sound, a howl, close to close. Not one, but many. The wolves had circled tighter than ever before, their voices rising in a chorus that rattled the tippy hides. The hunters gripped their bows. Mothers held children against their chests, whispering prayers into their hair. Suddenly, from the edge of the firelight, shadows lunged. The wolves attacked not in secret, not to snatch a lone child or weak elder, but boldly, together. Their teeth flashed, their eyes burned. They tore into the drying wrecks, ripping what little food remained. Hunters loosed arrows, their voices sharp with shouts. One wolf fell, but 3 more surged forward, and then something worse. The deer, from the trees. A herd burst forth, not running away from men as deer should, but charging toward them. Their hooves thundered on the frozen ground. They crashed into the outer tipis, knocking them flat. One man was trampled before he could rise. The people screamed not only from fear, but from the horror of seeing gentle creatures turned into weapons. The fire blazed higher as the hunters fought. Spears pierced the night. The wolves snarled, the deer reared, and all around the village chaos erupted. Children hid beneath furs, their small hands covering their ears against the roars and screams. Then came the bear. It emerged from the tree line like a shadow made flesh, towering above both wolf and man. Its growl shook the very snow. It swiped once at a tipi, shredding hide and pole as if tearing paper. The people scattered. Arrows rained against its thick fur, but the beasts did not fall. The fight seemed endless. The wolves finally withdrew, leaving trails of blood in the snow. The deer fled back into the forest, their hooves echoing into the distance. The bear, after bellowing one last time, turned and vanished into the blackness. Silence returned, but it was not peace. The village lay in ruins. 2 hunters lay dead. A child was missing. Food stores were gone. The fire crackled weakly, no longer a protector but a reminder of what had been lost. And as dawn broke, the people asked the question no one dared voice the night before. Had the animals truly turned against them, or had the spirits themselves unleashed this punishment? The people could not go on as before. Too much had been lost. The wolves had tasted their food, the deer had trampled their homes, and the bear had struck fear into their very bones. If this was punishment, they needed to understand why. If this was survival, they needed to find a way through. So they turned to the shaman. He was a man, old as stone, his hair long and white, his body bent but unbroken. His tipi was filled with the scent of sage and cedar herbs, hanging from every beam. His eyes seemed to look through time itself, past the snow, past the hunger, into a place where spirits moved unseen. That night, as the people sat trembling by the fire, the shaman prepared for a vision. He stripped down to bare skin despite the cold, painted his chest with black ash, and placed hot stones into a pit. Over them, he poured water until steam rose in heavy clouds. The people heard his chants echo into the darkness, each word like a call across the veil. He fasted, he sang, he prayed, and then he saw Dot in the vision. The animals stood together, not as prey, not as hunted, but as warriors. The wolf bared its teeth, the deer lowered its antlers, the bear rose high, the eagle circled above. Behind them loomed a shadow greater still, a figure without shape yet filled with power. A voice thundered, "The bond has been broken. Man takes more than he gives. The forest starves because you do not honor the old ways. Restore balance, or the land itself will rise against you." The shaman gasped, sweat pouring from his body, though the air was ice. He fell to the ground, trembling, until the vision faded. When dawn came, he told the people what he had seen. Some wept, some grew angry. A few argued that the spirits were blind. Had they not always given thanks? Had they not always prayed? But the shaman shook his head. Somewhere, the bond was broken. Somewhere, a promise was not kept. Until we make it right, the forest will not forgive. The people asked what they must do. He told them, offerings must be made, not scraps, not prayers alone, but sacrifice. The best of what they still had. The finest furs, the last of their food, even their strongest hunters, if the spirits demanded it. Fear rippled through the camp. Could they truly give so much when they already had so little? but hunger and terror left them no choice. That night, as the fire burned low, the people placed their most precious belongings into the flames. The smoke rose high, carrying their pleas to the Great Spirit, and in the distance, the wolves howled again, closer, sharper, hungrier than before. The offerings were made. The tribe gave up what little they had left, their best furs, the last of their dried meat, even tools carved from stone and bone that had taken seasons to perfect. The flames swallowed it all, crackling as if hungry themselves. The smoke curled skyward, carrying their prayers into the night. But the forest did not answer with peace. The next night, the howls returned, louder, closer. The wolves circled like a storm of teeth and shadows. The children clutched their mothers, their eyes wide with terror. The hunters stood ready, but arrows felt too thin, too weak against such relentless hunger. Then came the crows, hundreds of them. They descended on the village in a black wave, clawing at hides, tearing at food scraps, even pecking at the flesh of the wounded. The people swung torches, shouting, but the birds only scattered into the dark, cawing as though mocking them. The balance was not restored. The offerings had not been enough, and then the worst sign of all, the river. When dawn came, the people discovered that the river, once their lifeline, had shifted overnight. The ice had cracked in jagged lines, as though torn apart by an unseen hand. Beneath the broken surface, fish floated belly up, dead. No hunter could explain it. No elder could remember such a thing ever happening. The river itself seemed to reject them. Fear turned to despair. Some whispered that the spirits wanted them gone, that the land itself had turned against them. Others shouted in anger, demanding to leave the cursed village behind. But where could they go? Snow stretched endless in every direction, and the animals would follow. That night, the elders gathered once more. The shaman spoke in a voice ragged with exhaustion. The spirits will not stop. They want more than offerings. They want proof. We must show them we still remember the old ways. We must give them a life. The words dropped like stones into the fire. A life, the people argued, their voices fierce and desperate. Some shouted that it was madness. Others said it was the only way. The debate lasted until the flames burned low, until only embers remained. At last, silence fell. The tribe knew what must come: a trial, a sacrifice, something to satisfy the bond that had been broken. And as the moon climbed high, a heavy drumbeat began to echo through the camp, slow, relentless, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The people shivered, for they knew the next night would decide their fate. The drumbeats grew louder as darkness fell. Each thump echoed through the snow, carrying dread into every chest. No one spoke. No one moved. They all knew this was the night when everything would be decided, man, beast, and spirit alike. The shaman stood at the center of the fire. Smoke swirled around him, twisting in shapes that looked almost alive. His voice broke the silence. The spirits demand a sacrifice. If we give nothing, the forest will take everything. The people trembled. Who would be chosen? A child? A warrior? The thought was unbearable. Yet the fear of annihilation weighed heavier. Before a decision could be made, the forest answered. From the darkness, the wolves came. Not a handful this time, but dozens. Their eyes glowed like embers, their breath steaming in the cold air. Behind them surged the deer, antlers lowered like spears. Above, black wings filled the sky crows, screaming like war horns. And then, with a roar that split the night, the bear returned, its massive frame blotting out the moonlight. The people cried out. Some ran, others raised their weapons. But the animals did not wait. They charged. The battle was chaos. Wolves lunged into the firelight, snapping at legs and arms. Spears pierced the air, arrows hissed through the smoke. Deer crashed into tipis, splintering poles, scattering flames across the snow. The crows dove like arrows themselves, clawing at eyes and faces. The bear struck hardest of all, tearing through the camp with raw fury. Its growls shaking the ground. It seemed the tribe would be destroyed. But then something shifted. A young hunter, no more than 20 winters old, stood tall in the firelight. Instead of striking the animals with his spear, he dropped it. He spread his arms wide, his voice breaking with desperation and power. "Brothers, we have taken too much. If it is blood you seek, then take mine. Let my people live." The wolves froze, their teeth bared but unmoving. The deer halted, their breaths steaming in the cold. Even the crows circled higher, as though waiting. The bear stepped forward, its massive paws sinking deep into the snow. It sniffed the young man, its breath hot on his face. And then it stopped. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The animals turned their gaze toward the fire, toward the offering that still smoldered there. Slowly, one by one, they stepped back. The wolves melted into the shadows. The deer turned and vanished into the trees. The crows scattered into the sky, their cries fading. The bear lingered, its black eyes locked with the young hunters. Then, with a low rumble that shook the ground, it turned and lumbered into the forest. Silence fell. Only the crackle of fire remained. The people collapsed to their knees, weeping. The young hunter still stood, trembling but alive. He had given his life in spirit, and somehow that had been enough. The shaman raised his voice. "The bond is not broken. It is wounded. Tonight, we have been spared, but never again can we take without giving." The tribe listened, their hearts heavy. They had survived, but the lesson was burned into their souls like a scar. From that night on, the story was told as a warning. The night the forest animals turned against the tribe, and the sacrifice that saved them. In the moons that followed, the tribe rebuilt. They stitched their torn tipis, reforged their tools, and gathered what little the land still offered. But they did so with new eyes, new hearts. The young hunter who had offered himself became a living symbol of balance. Children were taught his name beside the names of the great spirits. Hunters carried his story in their minds each time they raised a bow. Women sang of him when they tanned hides, reminding each other of the bond between people and beasts. The elders said that the forest had not truly turned against them, it had only reminded them of something too easily forgotten. Man does not stand above the animals, but beside them. From that day forward, the people gave more than they took. For every deer hunted, they left tobacco. For every tree cut, they planted new life. For every fish caught, they sang gratitude to the river. They understood that survival was not about domination, it was about partnership. And the forest responded. The wolves once again circled at a distance, neither friends nor foes, but watchful guardians. Deer returned to graze near the village, cautious but calm. Even the crows, those black-winged messengers, seemed less like omens and more like reminders, always watching from above. The story of that winter spread far beyond one tribe. Other nations told it around their fires, each adding their own lesson. Some said it warned against greed. Others said it showed the power of sacrifice. But all agreed, the balance between man and nature is sacred, and to forget it is to invite disaster. And even now, centuries later, the story still speaks. Because when the land is scarred, when animals vanish, when rivers grow sick, the question remains, have we broken the bond once more? The elders would tell you yes. The forest still watches. The animals still remember. And if we are not careful, they may rise against us again. So now you've heard the tale of the night. The forest animals turned against the tribe, a story of hunger, fear, sacrifice, and survival. But it is more than legend. It is a warning. Think about your own life. Do we still live in balance with the land? Or are we, once again, taking more than we give? If the spirits of the forest rose tonight, would they stand beside us or against us? I want to hear what you think. Do you believe this story was myth, memory, or prophecy? Drop your answer in the comments. I'll be reading every one. And if you want more forgotten legends and Native American history told by firelight, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe for the next story, because the old voices still have much to say.